Welcome to the Practical Growth Podcast. I'm your host, E.B. Johnson, top writer on Medium.com, published author, and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. You've landed on the podcast that takes you on a journey into the heart of relationships and self-discovery. This is a must listen for those who are ready to overcome their toxic relationships and their toxic patterns. You can expect real talk, practical guidance, and raw and relatable guests that you'll be talking about for weeks. Let's get into it.
This week, we are going behind the buzzword to break down gaslighting. That is right, gaslighting. What is it? What does it really look like? How does it manifest in our modern day relationships? And what can we do to confront gaslighting in our lives? You know, you would be hard pressed to think of any kind of digital platform, especially if it's like a writing and reading, a relationships platform, any of those, Medium, there's like, okay, hello, Bubbles, and, you know, all these other kinds of relationship and empowerment content websites. You would be hard pressed to look at any of those today and not find on their front page articles about gaslighting. Gaslighting. Stop the gaslighters in your life. Stop gaslighting yourself. Stop your employer from gaslighting you. It's literally everywhere. And 9 times out of 10, they get the definition of it entirely wrong. I'm so serious. It's one of the biggest buzzwords on the internet. It's not a secret that I'm a top writer on Medium. My articles have gone all over the internet thanks to the audience that platform gives me. I've been contacted to write for every Tom, Dick, and Harry that exists. I mean, you have like car companies reaching out saying, can we use your article on gaslighting? Can we like talk about relationships and gaslighting on our blogs? Would you like to do a piece? Gaslighting's everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. But really, 9 times out of 10, when you start breaking down the content that they've offered you, the advice or whatever listicle they've kind of put in your face, like their definition of gaslighting is not right, because in this kind of internet buzzword culture, gaslighting has kind of just turned into this like association with liars. It's anyone who lies to you. It's anyone who doesn't do something that you like, right? It's a lot like last week's episode. We talked about narcissism and how that's kind of come to be associated with selfish people. Well, the same things happen with gaslighting. It's kind of come to be overused and associated with behaviors and beliefs and patterns that aren't actually gaslighting. And it's almost understandable. Almost. Gaslighting is complex. It is a very dynamic form of mental and emotional manipulation. The definition that we've kind of come to know is not entirely accurate, because gaslighting manifests differently in different relationships and in different abusers. At its core, gaslighting is a form of abuse or manipulation that is meant to undermine your sense of self, the stability you feel in your situation or your relationship, and the kind of reality that you live in, or the reality as you understand it. It's not really as simple, though, as someone kind of telling you, oh, well, that never happened. Right? Again, it's very, very complex. It touches on our emotions. It really dives down into our mental resilience and our psyche. There's a lot going on when someone gaslights us, and it's not something that just like happens in one phrase or one sentence. It is traditionally a cyclic pattern that it builds up over time, and it happens in these kind of waves, and it can include, positive reinforcement and love bombing, the kind of things we talked about with narcissism, which keep us trapped within these abusive and toxic patterns. And we don't even realize how we got there. And worse than that, we struggle to understand how we can get out of it. So that's what I really wanted this episode to be all about. I want to break down these buzzword barriers that have been put up all around the concept of gaslighting, and I want us to get brutally honest with ourselves. I want us to be honest about what gaslighting actually looks like in the real world, how it affects our relationships, how it affects us, and how we can confront gaslighting both in others and ourselves and build more stability, build more security, put up boundaries around our well-being and our happiness so that we don't fall prey to abusers, manipulators, and their gaslighting tactics that undermine our ultimate happiness. Now, I've already talked a little bit about what gaslighting actually is and how it's really complex and it kind of manifests in different ways. And we're going to get more into that. But first, we need to look at kind of the 5 basic ways that gaslighting is able to kind of build up in our relationships with others, sink its claws into us, and completely rip apart our sense of self and our sense of reality. Now, there's 5 kind of techniques or kind of tactics that gaslighting falls into, and that is withholding, countering, blocking, trivializing, and denial. Now that kind of sounds maybe basic and upfront, but it is it's a bit nuanced. It's a bit more nuanced. So you can gaslight someone by withholding information. You can say, "Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know anything about that. Did that happen? I'm not sure." Right? Playing dumb, withholding information. You just leave out little important details or, just forget them or, pretend that you don't know them. That's withholding. And that is a really kind of subtle way that someone can gaslight you. Now, countering is a really interesting one because a lot of people never even realize they're kind of being the victims of gaslighting when counterings happen. So in a situation where countering is being used, you would, let's say, confront the person who is gaslighting you. And you would say, "Hey, I don't like this behavior that you used." That person who doesn't want to take accountability, because really, that's what gaslighting is about, right? It's about the abuser or the person in the wrong not taking accountability. And they do that by undermining your reality or any complaints that you have about them. So in countering, when you approach the kind of abuser or the quote unquote monster under the bed with the issue and you tell them, "Hey, I don't like this," they will counter you and they will then flip it around and turn it on you. And they will bring up, let's say, something that happened 20 years ago or a week ago or something bad that you did. So if you say, "I don't like that you talked and spoke through my event," they might counter that with, "Well, do you remember that time when you lied to me? I was really hurt by that." That is countering, and that is also a form of gaslighting that shifts the entire conversation. It puts the blame back onto you. It leaves them in a place where they don't have to be accountable for their actions, and it makes you look like the bad person. That's countering, and it is gaslighting. Blocking is another really interesting form of gaslighting because this one is often used by those in position of power or those who are kind of hiding behind the mask of compassion. So you'll see this a lot in families. But blocking might occur when a loved one prevents you from doing something that you want to do, and then they claim that their manipulation of you or their prevention of this opportunity was a form of love. So again, this gets turned back on you. They might say something like, "I just didn't want you to fail. I was so afraid that you were going to fail that I called them and told them that you didn't want the job." That would be blocking. It's sabotage, it's gaslighting, and it's not acceptable. Whether or not you're ready for the opportunity, that's not their decision. That's up to you. Now, the 4th kind of bracket that a lot of gaslighting falls under is trivializing. Trivializing is very, very kind of obvious, right? When someone trivializes a complaint or an issue that you have, they play it down. They make it seem like it's smaller than it is. For instance, if you come up to your partner and your spouse and you say, "Yeah, when you told me to lose weight, that really hurt my feelings." And they turn around and say, "Are you really bringing this to me right now? Are you really upset about that? About I called you fat. So what? It's not a big deal. Get over it." Yeah, that's trivializing, and it is not correct. It doesn't matter if the other person perceives your issue to be small. If it's an issue to you, it is an issue that deserves to be talked about. Do you deserve to punish them until the end of time? No. But any issue that you have, it deserves to be discussed out in the open. You should be comfortable sharing that. But that doesn't happen with a gaslighter, especially not if it's an issue that is going to reflect on their ego and their sense of self. In those cases, they're going to trivialize you, and they're going to make the bad things that they've done seem not so bad so that they don't have to take accountability for the wrong things that they've done. Now, the fifth kind of branch of gaslighting is denial, outright denial. And this, again, all of these can kind of take different forms. They can happen in different ways. Denial is the same. Denial is overall, it's a denial of the reality that you claim. So again, if you were to approach someone and you were to say, I have a problem with this, a gaslighter who's employing a denial tactic would say, never happened. Never happened. That never happened. You're crazy, right? That's where this you're crazy, which we've heard a lot with gaslighting. That's one thing that the internet tends to get right is gaslighters call you crazy. This kind of thing could fall into denial. And then you will also see this denial used with others. So let's say if you go and speak to someone outside of the situation and then they talk to the abuser will deny the situation to them as well. To the outside world, they will always say, no. A gaslighter will deny. Never happened. Never happened. Can you believe they told this story? That's crazy. Crazy. Never happened. That's denial. So all of this kind of comes together to overall give us our solid picture, right? Our kind of foundational understanding of gaslighting, what it is and how it works. Okay. At its core, it is meant to undermine your truth and absolve the person who's hurt you from taking responsibility for their actions. And this is done by denying your reality, trivializing your feelings, leaving out information, etc., etc. But that doesn't necessarily help us identify gaslighting experiences in the real world, right? Yes, this knowledge is empowering and it's very, very helpful for us, but it doesn't give us the complete picture. So for you to really kind of understand how this is all playing out in kind of typical ways, I want to break down gaslighting. I really want to break it down. I want to give you some real world examples so that the next time you encounter them and you find yourself in that situation, you can have that little piece of your brain in the back, that little voice, that little piece of me in the back of your brain that says, whoa, this is not right. We're gonna hit the brakes here and we're gonna reconsider. So let's look at some real world examples of gaslighting and how it kind of affects us. So this is the point in the podcast that unless you're driving or you're running on the treadmill in the gym or chasing your kids around your house, this is the point in the podcast that I would recommend getting out some pen and paper, because I'm going to give you a lot of real world examples here. These are going to be a combination of both situations, experiences, and actual phrases that people will use against you that are examples of gaslighting. Okay. Because as I've explained several times, it's very subtle the way someone can gaslight you, right? Some people don't even realize they're gaslighting you because they've been just trained and conditioned to do this to people when they want to get them to do something else. So get out your pen and paper. We are going to break it down. Let's do some real world examples right here and right now of gaslighting in your everyday life. Right. So the tactics of gaslighters. Are you being gaslit in your life? These are some of the real world examples that you need to be on the lookout for. Reversal of blame. This one's used a lot. It's used a lot. And we touched on this earlier when we talked about countering. Reversal of blame happens when you bring something up, you bring up an issue, and the gaslighter flips it around and makes it about you. Let's say that you call them out for communication issues, and then they immediately counter you by saying, well, I don't talk to you because you're never home. Or I don't talk to you because you're always with the kids. Or I don't talk to you because you're always with your friends. This is meant to shift the conversation, put the blame back onto you so that the gaslighter doesn't have to handle the accountability and what comes with accountability, which is change. They would have to change their behavior and they don't want to do that. So instead, they just reverse the blame and put it on to you. Now, another one that I really like, and this is one that people sometimes miss, right? This is one of those subtle signs, is the suggesting of professional help, right? This goes along with the kind of the accusations of crazy, right? That crazy calling that gaslighters like to do, but it is much more subtle. So you may not recognize it because they will also wrap it under the fake guise of compassion or care. So suggesting professional help, this can be gaslighting when you come to someone with a genuine issue. It has to be a genuine issue. They've actually done something wrong. And you say, hey, I don't like that you did this thing to me. And instead of them taking accountability, they put on this very, very concerned look and they say, what are you talking about? Oh, I'm very concerned about you. I think you might need to get some professional help because this is just, your reaction is uncalled for. This is extreme. This is really extreme, right? So they turn around and they make your reaction seem way bigger than it actually is. And they use that to deflect and put the blame back onto you. So suggesting professional help, sometimes it's care, sometimes it's gaslighting. Make sure you know which one you're dealing with. Now, a gaslighter might also use deflection and distraction as a way of bouncing off that accountability for those bad actions, but also to make sure that you get destabilized, right? And your sense of reality, your sense of right and wrong, it all comes into question. And they will do this by kind of, it's a sneaky and snide behavior. So you'll try to confront them and they will bring in a totally unrelated mistake that you've made, right? So this is a little bit different than countering because they're not bringing up something wrong that you actually did to put genuine kind of blame, which is it's not relevant, back onto you. This is a completely irrelevant thing that they'll just kind of throw out of left field in order to confuse the situation, change the subject, all of the above, right? So this is gaslighting. If you were to say, hello, I don't like what you just said to me. And then this person says, do you remember that time we went to Shoney's and you coughed at me? And I found that insulting. That's going to be deflection. A gaslighter might also rely on the tactic of invalidation. Now, in the real world, this happens when a gaslighter cuts you down in order to sow seeds of doubt, to make you look incompetent or unreliable, right? So this invalidation, that is when that kind of, you're crazy. That's when that comes into play, which, as I said, this is like the one thing that the internet tends to get right is invalidation. Gaslighters like to use invalidation in order to make whatever complaints you have about them invalid. So they'll use this against you. If you come to them with a complaint, they will say, you're crazy. That's ridiculous. I would not say that to anybody else. But once this kind of behavior leaks out, because you talk to your friends, you talk to your family, when that leaks out, the gaslighter will then tell those people in order to save face and to make sure that they maintain control of the situation, they'll tell those people that you're crazy too. This is a tool that they really, really, really like to use outside of your relationship with them in order to make sure that they maintain control within the relationships. They tell everyone else that you're crazy, you're unreliable, you don't show up, like yada, yada, yada. And then that makes them seem more valid so that more people will be on their side in whatever kind of emotional manipulation, war, power dynamic struggle that you're in. These last few examples are where it gets really interesting, right? These are the more nuanced kind of ways in which a gaslighter goes about undermining our reality, shifting responsibility and accountability, but really just like manipulating us in the most damaging ways. On kind of the top surface of these more subtle ways that a gaslighter manipulates us is undermining. This is when a person goes out of their way to make you look bad. I mean, and this will happen even when you're not fighting. You don't even have to bring a complaint to a gaslighter. You don't have to confront them for them to do this abuse and this manipulation and this toxic behavior, right? Because this is a power thing for them, and it will occur at any point in which they feel that they need to put you in your place and put themselves in a place over you. So this undermining will occur even when you're not fighting. It's a form of, they will publicly humiliate you. They will sabotage your career. They will undermine you to your competitors, whatever they have to do in order to make you less than them. Because again, gaslighting is not just about like a one instance, oh, I think you're wrong confrontation. It is a form of manipulation that's kind of occurring all the time. It's a form of manipulation that's utilized by primarily really heinous kind of abusers, like narcissistic abusers. So undermining is something that they really, really, really like to use. They also like to blame you for their bad behavior, which we've covered a little bit, and they'll do whatever they have to do to blame you for that bad behavior, because it's not about them becoming a better person. It's about them being comfortable at all times. And that means you're going to have to take the fall for the things that they get wrong. Minimization of perspective is another one that gaslighters love to use, especially when it comes to their intimate relationships that they're in with their partners and their spouses. This minimization is all about like fending off that confrontation, right? It's about preventing you even coming to them and calling them out for their bad behavior. They at all times will just treat you as though you aren't valid and you aren't worthy. It destroys your self-confidence and your sense of self-worth. And it's all because they want you to feel bad about yourself so that you're easier to push around. They want to detach you from your feelings of like, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to set boundaries. You don't speak to me this way. You don't act this way. They want to detach you from that. So they minimize your perspective. They over and over again, this is the trivialization. That's silly. That's dumb. You're silly. You can't do that. All of this is a form of gaslighting that's meant to make you think that you're lower than you are and that the person that you're dealing with is better than they are and that they're not responsible for the horrible way in which you're being treated. And this always expands. It always expands, especially if you find the courage and the strength to break with the gaslighter. That's when things really detonate, right? They will start rumors. They love to spread rumors. That's another form of gaslighting. They'll tell anyone and everyone that you've ever met, your family, your friends, your boss, your coworkers. They will tell the guy on the street, the guy they meet at the bus stop, anyone who will listen to them at the gas station, that you are a horrible person, that you are responsible for every bad thing that happened in their lives, that you're responsible for every bad thing that happened in their relationship, right? They, again, blame you for the bad behavior. They blame you for everything that ever went wrong. They insist that you're wrong. They minimize who you are and invalidate who you are to others. It's all a system. It's all meant to keep them on the top of the pile, keep you beneath the pile, keep you in line, and destroy you if that's what it takes. But here's one last kind of real world example of gaslighting that I really, 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 really want you to pay attention to, right? If you've not paid attention to anything else in this podcast, if you're going to fast forward, just wait until I just listen to this part. Okay, this is the most important real world example. And I have so many friends and clients and even family members that miss this as a sign of gaslighting. But it is, right? Because it shifts accountability. It makes you feel bad about yourself. It manipulates you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything we've talked about. And this is blocking, sabotage. Okay, if you have a partner or a spouse who every time you start to rebuild or better your life in somewhere, you start to invest in some real personal growth, you invest in your happiness, right? You start to rebuild yourself and you start to get that future. You're manifesting better friendships. You've got a better career. You know, you're starting to make money. You've got opportunities for yourself. And then they start lashing out and they start sabotaging us. Even though you're starting to make sense of the world around you, they just start making everything horrible. It's because they can't tolerate that. For you to grow as a person, for you to become financially independent, emotionally independent, you're going to wake up to their nonsense and they can't have that. So the gaslighting has to kick in. Even if you're not having confrontations, it's got to kick in. And that usually kicks in the form of sabotage, a partner who then immediately starts lashing out. This can all fall under the bracket of gaslighting. Oh yeah, gaslighting. But so what? So what? This is usually the point. If you are someone who's ingested a lot of these gaslighting articles and listicles from websites, this is usually the point when they just kind of cut off and leave you hanging. They hand you a couple of signs, which are usually inaccurate, and then they bounce off into the sunset and leave you with this toxic person on your hands and no idea what you're going to do with them. But anyone who has read my content on Medium, anyone who follows me on Instagram, anyone who's been coached by me, you know that that's not my style. Yeah. And this episode is all about getting outside of these buzzword BS articles and giving you the truth. So there is a very important reason that you want to identify and acknowledge these gaslighters in your life. Okay. It's not just like a fun little quirky thing that you do on a weekend because you like to people watch. Gaslighters do damage. They create a very slow erosion of self. They detach us from our sense of self-worth, but also they can just detach us from our sense of self. We lose who we are when we are constantly bamboozled and swindled and manipulated by gaslighters. It undermines who we are. We lose touch with like that backbone that we've got and like our needs and our ability to speak up for ourselves. It's really, really toxic. It teaches us how to lie about ourselves. It teaches us gaslighting tactics of our own. It teaches us not to be accountable for our actions. You know, there's so many downsides to gaslighting. It's not just a matter of dealing with someone who's uncomfortable or inconvenient or who lies about us. We can pick up our own toxic traits from dealing with gaslighters, and then those spill over into other relationships, other experiences, other opportunities, which just further make us unhappy. If you've been the victim of gaslighting, then you can find yourself dealing with serious mental and emotional decline. People with like really hardcore encounters with gaslighting, they can develop PTSD, they can develop codependent relationship tendencies, and they can even develop insecure attachment, right? So even if you manage to get away from that gaslighter, you take all of those toxic things into your next relationship and you end up clinging to a partner and feeling that same insecurity and destabilization that the gaslighter implanted in you. Even if your new friends, your new partners, your new family, they don't give you that same sense of instability. You'll also find yourself losing trust. You lose trust in yourself. You think, well, how did I fall for that? Like, I must not be able to pick people. I must not be able to manage my own life and my own emotions because I fell for that. You also come to not trust your future partners. You know, you think, is this person gonna treat me that same way? Is this friend going to also never take accountability? Is everything going to be my fault? There's a substantial loss of trust. And within that loss of trust is a loss of your ability to be vulnerable. And if you can't be vulnerable, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship you have. If you can't be vulnerable, then that relationship won't grow. It will never get past a superficial level. And you'll find yourself always disappointed, always disgruntled, always unhappy because you're craving a real relationship with people. And if you don't trust them, you can't have that relationship, right? And that's what gaslighting teaches us. Gaslighting completely destroys our self-esteem. Even if we make it out on the other side and we get away from the gaslighter, we are implanted with this self-doubt because we've spent all this time being told by this person that was a part of our reality that we needed to doubt ourselves. It becomes a pattern. It becomes this kind of little implanted reaction in the back of your brain. Your natural reaction to things, if you're the victim of gaslighting, becomes to doubt yourself. You doubt your ability to pick relationships. You doubt your ability to pick the right opportunities for yourself, to excel at your career, to make better friendships, to build the right family, to take care of yourself. It all comes together and it creates this nasty little ball of low self-esteem and low self-worth, which again spills out into everything else in your life and again tears apart that happiness and that future that you're building. Because gaslighting destroys our self-esteem and this kind of concrete sense of reality that we have. It also damages our other relationships. As I said, future relationships get damaged by it. It damages our relationship with ourselves. And in that, it can create this kind of desperate need for validation. And that's what harkens back to, as I mentioned before, if you are the victim of gaslighting, you can find yourself in future relationships having this desperate need for validation. You can get clingy. You're completely destabilized, right? And that's the point of gaslighting. It destabilizes you so that you are easier to manipulate and control. So that is why gaslighting is so damaging. And that is why, despite all these articles, these buzzword little articles out there who love to point out gaslighting and teach you nothing else, you have to be honest about these instances in your life so that you can confront them and secure your well-being, secure your happiness, secure this future that you're working so hard to build for yourself, for your children, for your family. So, addressing it. How do we address gaslighting? How do we confront it in our lives? It is tricky. It is hard sometimes to spot. And even when we do spot it, it can be really, really, really complex and hard to deal with. It's not easy solving problems with someone who refuses to take accountability, who always throws it back on you, even though it's not always your fault. That's a hard thing to deal with, but we have to deal with it if we want to be happy, especially when this gaslighting is coming from a close friend or a close family member or the literal partner that we share our beds with at night. First and foremost, you have to learn everything you can about gaslighting. Yes, this podcast is a fantastic place to start. Yes, the handful of articles I've written on Medium, which actually outline real gaslighting, yeah, that's a great place to start. But it's not going to fix the problem if you're dealing with real gaslighting in your life. That's only going to be addressed when you really fully and truly understand what you're dealing with. You've got to go out there and seek all the knowledge you can possibly find. You've got to get books from the library. You've got to get ebooks. You've got to read more articles. You've got to talk to people, listen to the experiences of others, talk to coaches, talk to therapists, talk to counselors. You need to really have an innate, ingrained and natural understanding of gaslighting so that when you're put in those situations, as tricky and subtle and nuanced as they are, you are able to instantly identify them and instantly react in a way that is not just, over the top or self-sabotaging. You can react in an educated way, which allows you to be more effective and more efficient in basically every respect of those words. Once you have a full understanding of what gaslighting is and how it affects your life and how people might employ gaslighting tactics, how you might even employ some of those gaslighting tactics, you need to take the next step, which is to stop internalizing. Stop internalizing the guilt and the blame that belongs to other people. You can't keep personalizing this behavior that other people are casting onto you, right? If your partner is a gaslighter, if they're always shifting the blame every time you come to them and you want to talk about, physical intimacy problems or maybe communication issues or disrespect, or even, God forbid, you're talking about abuse with them, they will try to shift that back and put that on you. And if you are not cognizant of what's happening, then you'll internalize that. You will go, oh, well, he is right. I did that one time, do that one thing that upset him. So maybe I am the bad guy. Maybe this is my fault. You got to stop that. Now that you have this newfound knowledge and you realize what's going on, you got to stop that in its tracks. And you have to say to yourself in these moments, no, this is not my fault. No, we're going to focus on one issue at a time. And this issue is this person's issue. And this is what they've done. This blame is not mine. This is on them. And I'm not going to make that my own. Once you've mastered the art of that de-internalization, once you've stopped kind of personalizing and internalizing and taking on all of that blame, you can then start setting boundaries with the gaslighter. And this is like really strong, really permanent emotional and mental boundaries with them. So when they start this trivializing, when they start denying you, when they start countering you, you are able to drop the wall and immediately go, no, absolutely not. This is not happening. Excuse me. We're going to discuss this. Nope. Excuse me. This is not about me. This is about you. Let's stay focused, right? You've got boundaries, and those boundaries include speaking up for yourself, not allowing someone else to put you in any kind of box, to kind of shoulder any kind of blame onto you that is not authentically yours. Boundaries have to happen. You have to draw the line around your well-being and your happiness, and you have to make it clear to the gaslighters in your life, hey, this behavior doesn't fly. The only people that are allowed to take up space in my life are people who are honest, people who want the best for me, people who take accountability for their actions, people who don't abuse me and manipulate me. I do always try to reiterate to my clients and to my readers, though, that it's not all, you don't have to do this all alone, right? Yes, most of this heavy lifting of kind of course correcting and repairing these relationships we have with gaslighters and putting them to an end, so much of that work is an inside out job, right? You, at the end of the day, have to be the one to draw the line and say, no more, we're not doing this. This is how things are done when it comes to a relationship with me. That all comes down to you. But you can still have a support system behind you that lifts you up, that kind of makes it easier for you mentally and emotionally. You don't have to do every single bit of this hard work by yourself. So what I always try to reiterate is that a support system is so important anytime you're dealing with any kind of abuser, manipulator, toxic person in your life. You need friends, you need family, you need people around you who see the best in you, who want the best for you, people who can motivate you, who can lift you up, who can encourage you to keep going. These are good people. These are solid people, right? Because life's hard. We get battered. We get knocked down. We need someone there to just remind us that we're capable and we're strong enough to keep going. But these support systems can't just be fluffers, okay? A lot of you, when you're dealing with a gaslighter, they also happen to be severe, narcissists, abusers. You need people in your corner who know what you're dealing with. You need people who've been through that experience. So that might be new friends that you find in a support group, but it's also coaches. It's also counselors and therapists, right? People who actually really have invested time, energy, effort into understanding gaslighting and the adjacent abuses that can come along with that. And they can kind of shine a light on that path to healing. So you need to really build a village around yourself if you are recovering and healing from gaslighting. You need to be surrounded by people who can help you, who can kind of be the base of that pyramid and help lift you up as you rebuild these levels of self and get back to that kind of ultimate height of happiness and warmth and joy that you used to have. Above and beyond, though, if you have been the victim of gaslighting, the number one thing that you have to do is lean into a rebuilding of self-esteem. Okay, you need to really believe in yourself. You need to have the confidence to stand up for yourself. And more than that, you need to have enough self-esteem and self-worth to not allow any more of these toxic kinds of people to come into your life. It all comes back to self-esteem. You really need to have a strong sense of who you are. You need to believe in that person. You need to love that person. And that whole thing, that whole process of rebuilding your self-esteem outside of your relationship with the gaslighter, it's something you got to do on your own. It's its own process, right? So kind of start with things that you're good at. Start with people who are nice to you. These are all start easy when you're rebuilding your self-esteem. So get into those hobbies and activities that really kind of are easy to you. They spark your interest. You can kind of hyper focus on them. You can form new friendships. Start easy on yourself, rebuild that self-esteem, lean into the things you're good at, the people who really try to lift you up, the people who tell you that you're great, and go from there. This self-esteem is crucial in standing up to the gaslighters in your life and to making sure that they know where the line lies. You're only going to recover from gaslighting when you believe that you're worthy of that, when you believe that you're deserving of that. And that's how your future relationships get better too. You have to believe that you're worthy of those relationships being better. And then you will manifest the actions and behaviors and beliefs and everything else that comes along with making that a reality. Ooh, that has been a lot, right? That's a lot of information. That is a lot of stuff that I have just thrown at you. But this is why it was so important to me to have this relationship where we got away from that buzzword, gaslighting, that you've seen all over the internet without any kind of real substance or breakdown behind it. Okay? Gaslighting is horrible. It's a form of abuse and manipulation. It undermines your reality and it shifts responsibility back onto you. When you are in a relationship with a gaslighter, everything is your fault. They'll destroy you and they'll destroy your relationships with other people. If that means making sure they stay in power, and that means making sure that they are not accountable for any wrong actions that they've taken against you. Okay? Gaslighting is very dangerous. It completely destroys our self-esteem. It detaches us from our sense of self. It can destroy our relationships with our friends and our family and our partners. There are so many downsides to gaslighting. It's not just this kind of lying and denial that the internet buzzwords have created. A gaslighter is a manipulator, and a manipulator is an abuser. You cannot make any mistake about that. And that is all for this week's episode of the Practical Growth Podcast. I want to thank each and every one of you for being along this week. I hope this has provided some clarity on the way you've been feeling and the experiences that you've been having in your life. If you enjoyed the podcast, then why not head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a 5-star review? I'm currently giving a free ebook to everyone who leaves a 5-star review. So if you'd like to be in, all you have to do is head to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick 5-star review, screenshot that, and send it to me. Then you'll have your free ebook. It'll be right there on the way to you. This is also a quick reminder that spots are closing for my 8-week signature coaching program. So if you're interested in really turning your life around and making an absolute transformation to your relationships and yourself, this is the chance. Head on over to my website, therealebjohnson.com, and you'll be able to apply. We can change your life for the better, and we can do it together. Have a good one. Bye.